Let's get started. Hi everyone. My name is Aditi, and I'm a UX designer since the past 1 year. I've recently graduated from an architecture program, and I've been working at Zynga from the past year. Right. So I also stream on YouTube, so you can check that out. It's called my channel is called Famous Sword. So a lot of my streams tend to revolve around reviewing and playing, the first time playthroughs of any game. So, like what I've observed from playing games is that first impressions can really make or break the affinity of a player towards a game. So that conveniently brings us to the topic of this session. It's first impressions matter, and we'll be decoding the UX of main menus. So, to fully understand like the gravitas of first impressions, let us look at like this example. This is Mega Man X, which was made back in 1993 by Capcom for the Nintendo. So, my ask for all of you is to just look at this and try to gather as much information as you can just by looking at this. So, I'm going to pause here while you do that for a few seconds. Right. So here are some of my observations, right? So the first thing that you see outright is that there is no cursor on this. So Mega Man himself is the cursor, and you already understand the direction of progress, which is going from left to right. And you also get an idea that it's a 2D platformer. It's connected to space. It's an action shooter. So isn't that like isn't that like pure magic? Like you're understanding so many things just by looking at one single screen. But yeah, actually, it's not magic, it's UX design. So now that we know a little bit about title screens, let's talk about the functionality, right? We can, see it in two ways. One is the main thing, right, where it acts as a gateway into the core functionalities of the game, right, where the player can customize all their settings and just have them set up for a smooth session. But so over time, games have evolved into setting the tone of the game, right? Beyond just the basic functionalities. So they define this tone in terms of setting the environment, the aesthetics, and a lot more things. So what you're seeing right now is, two examples. One is of Gris and Cuphead, right? Both are, 2D platformers, but they have stark contrasts in their overall theming, difficulty, and just the vibe of it, right? So Gris is a very story-driven, calming game, while Cuphead is a very gruesome, grilling game, but both of them have like tried to show that theme and their environment through their title screens, right? uh, Games like Anno 1800 and most games these days have a very formal looking, uh, functional, direct title screen, right? So the need for that is fairly obvious. These games tend to be complex and they need the settings and customization for it. That is very, very direct and straightforward. Let's focus a little bit more on games that don't take that typical approach, right? So this is Inside. It's a game where it just shows the title for a few seconds and it just throws you inside the game. So it follows the story of a young kid, and he's in a very dark forest. Subconsciously, you're already rooting for him, just like you root for a protagonist as soon as you start watching a movie, even though you didn't know anything about him, right? So this is one example, and this is from Journey. So in Journey, there is a cinematic at the start, and you're just given the control of the main character, and you take this very long and patient walk through the desert. And only at the top is where the title of the game is revealed. So it's very, it doesn't have a standard main menu at all in the game. So why do they do that, right? Why do these games take this approach? So the reason for this is that these games are very mechanically straightforward. And for the creator of these games, it made more sense to avoid any sort of roadblock that would hinder them from immersion and make the player jump right in for a very seamless and wholesome picture of the game. So uh, for the games that do have title screens, let's look at examples of certain games and pinpoint what kind of UX impact that they have intended to deliver. So we'll be focusing firstly on games that have direct gameplay impact. Straight away, the main menus that have impact on replayability. So this is Vampire Survivors. For those of you who don't know, that this game took 2022 by storm because it made 7 million US dollars right in the first month of its launch. Yeah, and this was a very refreshing change when huge studios were making, very graphic heavy and very environment heavy games. This was very refreshing because it was that old school retro game with a very simple mission. You just have to survive till the very end. That's it. And since it's a roguelike, they knew that players will, have very short-term sessions. So they wanted as much retention as possible for them to, jump right back in. So the way they cracked this is that if you see on the screen that their CTAs are in a very specific proximity, they've kept the confirmation buttons in the same place, and only 3 taps helps you jump right into game. So along with this, there's also the option for quick start, which you see on the right corner. Even without going through these screens, you can still retain your previous settings and jump right back in with the same customization. So this helped them a lot in terms of replayability. So yeah, it's the same thing. One more example of the same thing would be Dota 2, a game that I've spent a lot of years on. If you see they apply the same kind of reasoning behind placing the CTA on the same spot. Just 2 clicks helps you jump into a match. But it's up to player choice to sit and make those settings for the match. Right. Um, Now, let's talk a little bit about the art of teaching the player how to play the game, right? So, teaching the player the most primary action that will happen during gameplay. So, Fruit Ninja is a very simple UI for the starting screen where there itself you slice the fruit and it throws you into game. So, this actually failed earlier because, and they found this out when they were testing the game at bus stops with random people, and they used to try to tap it, and they just got frustrated, right? So only after that they added in the idle animation where there's a hand swiping on it, and instantly that helped them kind of connect players better to go inside the gameplay. Okay, speaking of immersion, emotional connect, and just setting the tone of the environment, Dragon Age, takes the win for this because you're met with basically a very bomb soundtrack, but visually, right? You see they have done that bifurcation between, the left and right parties, which is one is the mages on the left and the Templars on the right, and they've created a focal point and they're marching towards something. So this is creating visual interest and curiosity in the player's mind. Okay, where are they marching to, and what is it that lies ahead? So once you click on new game or any actionable button, there's a bomb, there's a blast that happens on the mountain top, and this introduces the story right away. Then coming to same immersion but subcategory along with great visuals, right? So some games go beyond that and they try to deliver the best tailor-made experiences to player, which is based on their experiences in the game. So in Spec Ops, if you see, there's like different conditions when the different sets of title screens are seen, right? So it starts out with the sniper, camping on a rooftop. He's looking at the Dubai skyline. It's showing isolation. And later, as the game progresses and the story progresses, the scenes tend to get more grim and darker, showing his descent into madness. So it's tied to your progression in the gameplay. Okay. So we're all designers and we know how that sometimes it's a little difficult and tricky to present a lot of information on the same screen at once to our players, especially. In Splinter Cell, I'd like to just play a snippet of this. Yeah. So Splinter Cell is a very information heavy game, right? It has a ton of settings and a ton of options right at the start. So how do you give so much information at once, right? So because this game is a more mechanically complex game, they've tried to create some sort of visual interest between the transitions so that there is some engagement for the player to be interested in through all the menus, right? So they also showcase their their special USP, which is inside the game. There's a lot of zoomed in blow up shots where every time you get a kill, you see this. So that's the way they have cracked a lot of information heavy stuff. Yeah, I think that brings us to the end. Now, okay, these are a lot of examples, but suppose you are someone who is trying to build a game, right? These are some things that you can just think about while designing its title screen. So you could be tweaking the main menu of an existing game, or you could be building something from scratch. You can look at these items. So what sort of generally, like what sort of first impression are you trying to build through, and how much are you trying to showcase its environment and aesthetics and other things, right? That is one. Then there would be, this is quite important, where what is your plan for the player to, spend how much time from boot to play? What is the average time that you would aim for your player to have? Then what is the how much of customization do you want to give right at the start? Are you okay with them doing it in between, or do you want them to be set up right at the start so that they have seamless gameplay? And how much of habit building or teaching steps do you want to put at the start itself? How much do you want the user to have information with that they can just get started, and you can reduce the amount of tutorials? So once you have all of that sorted, the way you can measure your success are with these things, right? The first one is time to first action. So this would be the time for the player to go from the title screen to the first meaningful action. So the way we describe meaningful action would be perhaps the first action that they do, which counts as real gameplay, right? So this is one metric, and then there could be like drop-off rates for players who just stop engaging at the title screen. This could help you pinpoint what might have gone wrong. Why are players not interested? Right. So then coming to, like, suppose your game is quite heavy on the settings and the mechanics, you could also track engagement with those kind of elements, which are like buttons, CTAs, setting options, right? Customization options. And this you could track using heat maps to understand what are the most and least used settings, so that next time you can tailor made your game with those preloaded settings, right? And one of our favorites, monetization. So to engage our players, we can also, plant DLCs and bonus packs on the title screens. A lot of games have this. So this, we could track this as an understanding of how well they're performing. But also, while placing them, we could also think about how there could be, visual interest towards that section of those screens to have the most amount of engagement. And yeah, so coming to retention, we could also track what kind of onboarding we are providing to new players versus return players, and just understand what is the difference in their interactions in those two categories, and how we would track them using their click rates on certain items. I hope everyone had something to take away from this topic, right? And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much, Celia, and all the organizers of UX Summit 2024 for organizing this and giving me the podium to showcase my thoughts. Thank you.